So when you're touring a senior living community, it's really easy to focus on the apartment. And obviously the apartment matters. I mean, that's why you're there, right? But you want to ask about, things that happen outside that apartment too. And there's 3 questions that I think are very important, all right? First, if my parents or my needs change, that's a big question. What happens if my parents or my needs change? Maybe you're doing good today. Maybe at this level of care and support, things are hunky-dory. But what happens, if you need more help, say 6 months from now? Can help be added to where you're at right now? Is a higher level of care available in this same community? How about this? Would you have to move to another apartment or another part of the community if these changes happen? How much is that going to cost? That's a big question. Because I don't just want to know, whether the community works today. I want to know, how it might work if things change. Second, so what's actually included? What is the price? How much is it? And what is included in that price? Don't just ask a monthly number. Yeah, that's a monthly number. Ask what's included in that number. Are there meals? Is there going to be housekeeping? Are you going to have shuttles or transportation? Is there personal care or maybe even managed medication? That's a thing, right? Then ask what costs extra. And say your parents or you eventually need more care. What does that, how does that change the price? What is that going to do to the price? And also ask how often do their rates change? How often are there increases of the rates? Because you're not trying to just figure out whether this works financially for this month. We're trying to figure out, or we're trying to understand, what it could look like over time. That's what this is about. And the third question, what happens if we decide this is the one for us? What if we decide that this is the one we want to move here? Is there a waiting list? Is there a deposit that we have to make? Perfect example. Do you or your parents actually have to be assessed? What happens when an apartment actually becomes available? How long is that turnaround time? How much time do you actually need, or how much time do you get to make the decision? And how long does the whole process take once, how long does it usually take from acceptance to moving? Because you may tour communities and they all have nice apartments, nice dining rooms, some activities, beautiful common areas. That's great. But then later, when you're sitting there at the kitchen table trying to compare them, I want you to know, more than which had the nicer kitchen. You want to know what care can be provided. What does it actually cost? And when it happens, would you be able to get in? When would the place be available? Would you have to move if there were changes? Those 3 questions, they're going to give you a lot more information whether the communities actually works for you than the kitchen. And they have different kitchens. So that's it.